Okay, so to start off this next project, we are going to do, it actually has two parts as mentioned in the PowerPoint. There's a chaos part and there's a control part. For the chaos part, you should have two pieces of Bristol board taped down on a rigid surface. I have these outside on my picnic table. Make sure they're taped down on all four corners. As you can see here, I've got all my four corners taped down all the way around. I tried to make a nice even border on it. You can eventually trim these to 9 by 12 size once you get it set up, but they need to be placed flat down so that on all four sides, because when paper gets wet, if you've ever gotten a piece of paper wet, it tends to absorb the water and expand. Now, if it expands, it gets that kind of wrinkled look, and when it dries, it'll stay that way. Now, if we tape down the paper on all four sides and we get it wet and it expands, it will actually dry back into the same shape. This is called stretching paper, so that's why we have it taped down on all four sides. So this is step one. Now, step two is you're going to take your acrylic paints and you're going to divide them. You're going to mix up a few different colors and you're going to divide them into cool, I've put a few jars there, and warm colors. So we're going to have cool and warm versions of each of those colors. Right now I've just put a small amount of paint in each one of those jars. Okay, so the next step, I put a small amount of acrylic paint into each one of these jars and we're going to water it down. So I'm going to add a bunch of water to them. Could you back that up just a little bit, Elizabeth? I'll move this here. And I'm just going to add water. And I'm going to stir it up so it becomes a nice watery liquid. Now, this is going to help kind of add to the chaos part. You don't want it too thin, but you want it, you still want enough pigment in there that it's going to allow it to dry in pools. So we're going to do that with each one of our colors. Okay, so I went ahead, I mixed up each one of those acrylic paint. So you really, depending on the strength of your paint, if you have a nicer like Liquitex brand paint, you need a little bit less pigment to water because it has a stronger pigment. If you have the Basics brand, then you need a little more paint to water. But you want it to be, you want it to be thin, but you don't want it to be too watery because then it won't work as well. But, a little bit of wateriness is okay. So I've got all my paint mixed with the water. The next step is to take rocks, or you could really use any sort of heavier material that you have around your house. If you had like marbles or little kids' toys, other things like that you don't mind getting paint on. And then we're going to take and arrange them all over the paper. So as you can see here, I've kind of spread them around. You want some maybe bigger, some smaller. You're going to move them around the paper, kind of thinking about where you're placing them. And what's going to happen, we're going to pour the paints and they're going to tend to pool around where the rocks or the larger objects are. So I've sort of laid them out in two different designs on each one of the pieces of Bristol paper. Okay, so now the next step is you're going to take the paints and you're going to pour them over the rocks and pour them around the piece. You want to make sure you leave some white areas left. But you can kind of feel free. I have my daughter here helping me, so she's going to help me with the chaos part. So you're just going to pour them all over the pieces. Go right ahead. It can be a little messy. You don't have to try to direct it anywhere. You just kind of let it see where it flows. You can let it kind of dribble a little bit too.
Let me pour it.
Good. And the other thing that you can do as you're starting to work across. Okay. All right, looks good. Nice. See how they kind of tend to pool around where the rocks are at? All right, take another color here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why we're doing it outside. We can take another color here. Let me do this one. Pour it over top. Go ahead and let them interact. All right, go ahead. You can do that one. Try to come over on this corner here too. There we go.
banana.
Okay. Keep going. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some, you can also use other tools, like I could use my paintbrush and splatter some around, or if you have a straw, you can allow the straw to do some of the work for you. Feel free to kind of let some things kind of just happen on accident. That. You can also take the end and kind of drag it around a little bit just to create some other means of chaos. Maybe we'll use a little more blue over here. I mean, if I want, do you want to take, you can take a little bit of that. You can add a little bit of a warm or cool to places that's too much. Here and there to let things intermix if you want. So you can kind of fit. No, that's we're gonna, orange and yellow is in the warm colored one. Add a little bit more of this. So the other thing that you can do is add a little bit of salt to add some additional pop to things. What you can do is take some salt and you can add it to areas. Go ahead and add some salt down here. You can see. And as it dries, it's going to actually cause it to crystallize. Could you move your hand over that way a little bit? And it's going to form a pattern. You can kind of see. Add a larger amount right there.
Over here?
Yeah. It'll start to crystallize once it's in there. Let me try to get a close-up of it. Add a little more to this. Sprinkle like a large amount right there. There you go. And that can be an interesting pattern that you can play with in your piece. You can kind of see it causes it to kind of add some texture. Okay, so we're gonna do the other one and I'll do a quick shot of that one too. Okay, so we've mapped out our two pieces here. Are mostly warm and mostly cool, and we're going to leave the rocks on there for a little while, let the piece dry, and then we'll pick them up and untape it. So if you have somewhere that you can leave them sit outside for a little while to dry, it gets kind of messy. They'll stabilize a little bit, and sometimes they take overnight to dry, so just realize you're going to have to give them a little bit of time. Once these dry, you'll go on to the next part where we add the Micron pen over top.